Good morning. Today we're going to go through data types and variables, so how to make your code remember and use useful information. So we want to make sure that we can go beyond what we've done already in terms of integers and strings and talk about reals and chars, so different types of data that your code needs to remember. We want to know how to recognize variables and use variables and do that in Thonny and create with code using meaningful names. So rather than me saying oi, it's better for me to say your name. Same thing with variables. We want to give variables sensible names. Okay. Hopefully you've remembered from last year that a variable can store a value. It's a named container for a value, a named memory location where we can store one value. So let's look at the specific definition. A value stored in memory, in RAM on a computer, that can be accessed using a name, like score or age, or label, that's a memory address. Why is it called a variable? Because it can vary. When does it vary? When the program executes or runs. Right, so we have different data types here. We have an integer, we have a real or a float. An integer is a whole number, a real or a float isn't. We've got a Boolean and we've got a character. These are all using camel case, which is where we use capital letters for the humps on the back of a camel. And we've also got snake case. So I would like you, please, to open Create with Code and to make me 4 variables about you. I will make 1. You need to make the other 4. Create with Code. Choose your variable name sensibly using camel case or just single names. Or you could go for like my name. That would be camel case. I would like at least 1 integer, at least 1 string, at least 1 Boolean, and at least 1 float. So there we go. What do I mean by a Boolean? Hungry. I am always hungry. That's 2 variables about me. I would like 5 variables to store something about you. So we've got different data types here. Here's a summary. An integer is a whole number. A real, you might want to remember it as a more realistic representation of an integer, sometimes called a float, because that decimal point floats somewhere in what would otherwise be an integer. Boolean means true or false, named after George Boole, who invented a whole new area of mathematics to do with just trues and falses, and that's where we get the concept of binary, just dealing with things switched on, things switched off, zeros and ones. And a character could be a space, could be an apostrophe, could be a number, as long as the number only has 1 digit. Okay, if we choose the wrong data type, then we have problems, and we need to be able to deal with that. And we're going to use, blah, 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 let's just crack on, shall we? Hopefully you have your CT3 open. Can you also have Thonny as well as Compete with Code? Keyboard shortcuts are there to save you time. I would strongly recommend that you use them. So with Thonny open, worth checking, mine is set up on a microbit, which is not going to work. If it says microbit down at the bottom, change it to Thonny's Python, and it will work. We're going to need a file in here. You can have the same code. Video resumed. All right, so we're going to need some code in here. We want to fill in, there it is, our CT3 worksheet. So what does Control-C mean? Hopefully you know this already. If you don't know them, try them. Fill out all of these keyboard shortcuts. And we want to tell you a couple of extras. So I'm pressing Tab when I'm on the last one here to add in some extras. Class charts positives if you can put a new keyboard shortcut in this table. So we talked about keyboard shortcuts here. We want to use the keyboard as much as possible and the mouse as little as possible so that we can do as much as possible with as little effort as possible. That's not laziness, it's efficiency. So the more you use your keyboard shortcuts, the faster you'll be able to do your work. So let's move on to activity 2. We've got some code here which at last we can copy and paste. It's not a screenshot this time. So we can pop this in and replace the blanks. If we run it, it's not going to work because it doesn't like these things. We have to think of a suitable identifier, name, or a suitable value. So I think months has to be an integer. Weight in kilograms should probably be a float. You've got to decide a sensible thing that might be a name or a value so that the whole code works. Okay, so we've got different variables of different data types here. If we try and display bill paid, true, Boolean, and gender, character, M, if we try and concatenate, that means join together both of these, we're going to get a problem because bill paid, a Boolean, can't be joined with a character unless we convert them both to a string. So we could convert bill paid to a string, and we could convert gender to a string. Well, we might not have to because it's already a character. It might be all right. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. So now we can concatenate a Boolean with a character to get a string of all of these. You pop a screenshot in here. Make sure your screenshot shows the error that we did have. And then copy and paste the code that fixes it, please. Why is this an issue? Because data types are important. The type of data that we store affects how Python deals with that. So we have to be specific. We have to be precise about how the computer interprets that data. Okay, question 3. I'd like you to work independently. Each bullet point, work through. And you've got about 5 minutes to work on this before I pause and see if we need any help. All right, so let's get started with activity 3. In your on-screen exam, you will get a printed question paper. And the printed question paper will give you bullet points. There will be 6 questions. The first question will be dead easy. The last question will be really hard. And it gets progressively more challenging. But there are parts of every question that everyone can do, including question 6, the harder one. These type of things might be a question 1 or a question 2. So the bullet points printed on paper are often very similar to the comments, if not identical to the comments in your code. So I'm going to get these bullet points, pop them in here, get rid of the bullet point symbols and just replace them with a hash. And they can be our instructions for our code. I'm going to do one of them. I'm not going to do them all. I'd like you to do them all after I give you your screens back. So let's have a look. Create an integer variable called char counter and assign it the value 0. The hard bit here is not doing it. The hard bit is understanding the language and the terminology involved. First of all, always leave some blank space. Like if this is my code, you put a blank line above the comment so it's crystal clear that this comment refers to the line underneath it. Okay? Right, we need a variable called char counter. We need to give it the value 0. That's it. That's all it means. We make a variable, we choose a name, we assign a value. The value goes on the right, the name of it goes on the left, and we put an equals to do the assignment. All right, it's your job. Try and do that for all of the other variables. Okay, so quick recap. We want to make a variable. How do we do that? We just write its name. So height of person. We can't have a variable with a space, so we can use snake case, or we can use camel case. We have to be consistent, and I think this question told us we had to use camel case. So that's the name of a variable. This is asking for an integer, so that's a whole number. You can't put a unit in there because that's not an integer anymore. We have to just put the value. Remember, we put some white space above each comment so that we know that the comment refers to the line underneath. Okay. Your next challenge, your extension, is to ask the user for 5 values. So it could be name equals, and instead of putting your name in like this, we want to ask the user what it is. And we use input for that. That's like this week's Compete with Code challenge. And favorite food equals. I want you to ask 5 questions and then say something back to the person. Oops, if you can spell it helps. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'd like you to display a little message, hello, and then name, and then I like, and then their favorite food too. Notice I'm dipping in and out of string literals. What does that mean? It means here I'm literally wanting to display HELLO, a string literal, literally those characters in that order. Then I don't want to literally display NAME. I want to display what the user has typed in. I want to display the contents of that variable. So that's not in quotation marks. Do you get the difference? Let's run it and see. What's your name? Bob. What's your favorite food? Chips. There we go. That's the type of thing, but I want 5 questions. And the responses to your 5 questions are somehow worked into a print statement. You can have it on multiple lines if you want. They don't all have to be in one big long set of brackets. Ask 5 questions, store 5 answers, display concatenated, that means joined together, a little story or a little message. Okay, so our extension was to ask 5 questions, to store our answers in 5 different variables, and then to display a little message or a little story or something like that. When you've done, please close your Word document, save your Word document, making sure it's in your half-term 1 folder, and then upload it. It's really important that you save it first. There's a few people who've been uploading it in the wrong place. The right place is half-term 1, Algorithms and Programming 1. You click Edit Submission and get it all on there.